Welcome to Conscious Conversations, a place where East meets West, a place where conversations and ideas will challenge your minds, expand your consciousness, awaken your heart, and make you think more deeply about yourself and the world.
Hello everybody, welcome back to Conscious Conversations. I'm Anthony Profeta, here as always with Wes. How are you doing today, Wes Gordon?
Doing great. I feel like I was just here. It's amazing.
I think you were.
I like this place.
But you look very nice in that blue shirt today. Very regal and royal looking.
Thank you.
Yep, so everything's going well?
Pretty much.
Good, 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 good. Well, today we're going to be talking about a topic which for some might be a scary one to think about.
Yeah.
But when we're born, it seems that we're all headed in one direction. There's no avoiding it. Eventually, we're all going to go through this process known as death.
Right.
And so today we were talking a little bit, and going to be talking a little bit about some of the ideas that surround this topic. You know, from a biological, medical perspective, they classify death as the cessation of the functioning of an organism. So basically, an organism stops working. That's the classical medical definition of death. Psychologically, they say it's the loss of personhood. So you sort of, you know, that person's gone. But from spiritual perspectives, it's very different than both of those definitions. Yeah. Many say it's a transition. It's just a process. It's like stepping through a doorway back to another realm or into another realm, because there's different perspectives on this too. If we take many of the Eastern, their view is very, very different. It's like a cycle that we're trying to break out of, that we're born into this life, and then we go through life having these experiences, and if we don't purify ourselves, get ourselves in full alignment, then we keep coming back over and over and over again, trying to work ourselves back to where we came from, either reunion with God or spirit, however you want to call that. But from more of the Western, especially a lot of the Christian perspectives, they don't hold or view reincarnation or rebirth, which is what I was talking about from the Eastern traditions, as real at all. They think it's like you're born, boop, you come into life, then you move through life, and then hopefully, if you're good enough, you either get eternal salvation in heaven or eternal damnation in hell after death. They don't even believe you existed prior to death, some of them, in some cases. So there's all these different views surrounding what this idea of death really is. But what is your take, or, you know, has your viewpoint changed on it over your years, or?
Oh, absolutely, because, you know, it's a big thing for your psyche. Is like, I might die, I might no longer exist. I found, you know, growing up, I had in the church, they had what you were talking about, theories on this.
Right.
But I found contradictions in how they actually presented it and executed it, because I went to many funerals, unfortunately, and people would say, "Oh, she's in heaven now," and you know, and all this. But yet their theology teaches that no, they're not. They got to wait till this day that it's supposed to happen before they even go anywhere.
Like Judgment Day.
Yeah, like they're stuck somewhere and they're not. So there was a contradiction right there. But I got into studying the near-death experiences because of being so curious about just how it works. And, you know, you read and hear about a lot of those things where they see the light and they have mystical experiences, and then they come back and they're actually changed.
Yeah.
On a heart energy level, they see life totally different. And that kind of falls into line with some of the things I'm starting to believe about death. Is like you said, it's a transitional point.
Right.
It's not the end of the invisible part of you.
Right.
It's the end of the physical shell part of you.
Yes.
And I have a mentor that says that you come out of, when you lose your body, you leave your consciousness. Your consciousness is still there. You're still a child of God.
Right.
You have a form, but it's an invisible form, similar to the body you had.
Yeah.
But one of his statements, he believes that you transition, and you'll either come back or you'll go ahead and learn more on the other side. But a A lot of people think you just instantly graduate once you leave your body.
Right.
He doesn't believe that. He thinks that you're there at that level no matter what. And then maybe on the other side that you'll, be able to grow
right,
or have to come back into a body if that's, I don't know. No one really knows for sure
right,
how that really works. But, I just experienced a daughter. I lost a daughter, a 31-year-old daughter.
Yeah, I'm very sorry.
So, this comes close to, my home front and base. And I realized that her consciousness is not gone. And I referenced the fact that when Jesus went to Lazarus' tomb and raised him from the dead, he told those people, he's not dead. He merely sleeps.
He's sleeping. Yeah.
Well, that resonates with the other theories that I'm hearing, that you're not actually dead. You just may be unconscious for a period, and then you may reintegrate so you can continue this journey back to your Father's house and become a fully realized Christed being that you're supposed to be from the start, but we got this, something got in the way.
Right.
So how do you feel about that? How do you see that?
I think what you're saying is absolutely right. I mean, I am a firm believer in this idea of rebirth, reincarnation. I mean, like you were saying it with the studying of near-death experiences, it does seem that even sometimes they reaffirm that. And the research of Dr. Ian Stevenson and, the University of Virginia, he's since passed. It's now his assistant who's running it. I forgot his name. I think it's, Carver or something. But anyway, they've done studies with like thousands of children who remembered coming in with past life, and they went back and found the people. So I'm a firm believer in continuity of the soul.
Right.
That our body is like I call it a Hertz rental car. So we check into this body at birth, at our incarnation, but there's something that's moving this body, just like there's a driver of the Hertz rental car. Mm-hmm. And what's driving it is our consciousness, our spirit, our soul, the life energy that's animating our bodies. It moves us through life so that we have certain experiences that we need for our soul's growth and development, to maybe spiritualize ourselves in this lifetime, to hopefully regain recognition of our oneness with the Father, with God, with Spirit. And then, but if we do not attain that level of realization, then just as like you got to bring that Hertz rental car at some point back and check out of it, we check out of the body at death. But death, to me, is just a transition, like we said, in which someone is just going back to an essence that they were prior to the incarnation. So to me, the consciousness, the soul, whatever you want to call that essence within you that is driving your Hertz rental car of your body, just leaves it. The body deteriorates, but the soul itself transitions. And the way I sort of justify this is through the scientific expression of the laws of energy. So according to many scientists, Albert Einstein, all the great scientists, this universe is nothing but energy. That's all that there is. All the matter, the rocks, the trees, the sun, the moon, the stars, and our physical flesh and blood body, which is considered matter, is not true reality. The true reality is that all matter is energy. And our consciousness enters the form of the body, which is an energy. So the energy of consciousness enters the body. But then according to the law of energetics, energy cannot be created and it cannot be destroyed. All it could simply do is transition from one state to another.
Right.
And so that means that the law of energy says that your energy of yourself, your energy of your consciousness, the energy of your soul was not created at birth. It can't be, because energy can't be created. So it transitioned from somewhere in order to enter this 3D world. And then at death, the process of death, the energy that you are, science says, cannot be destroyed. So the energy of your consciousness, your soul, isn't destroyed at death. It again merely transitions when the body gets worn out and old. Just like if I wore this shirt for 80 years, God willing, I live to be 80 years old.
Right.
It would get worn out, it would get holes, I'd need to take it off. Well, the flesh suit at death gets taken off, and the energy of the body just transitions back. So I am aligning and agreeing with what you're saying, that the the statement of Christ, you know, that Lazarus is only sleeping, it's like the consciousness goes somewhere because the consciousness itself wasn't dead. And just like your daughter, which I am very sorry to hear about that, of course, I can't imagine, you know, that. But I don't believe that she is dead. I believe the consciousness just went on somewhere else.
Exactly.
But I think we need to take a quick break here, and we'll continue conversing about this when we come back, about death and, you know, what is this whole experience and some of the other ideas surrounding this interesting topic. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Conscious Conversations. We're here today conversing about the topic of death, which I know for many people is not something they really want to think about or talk about. Ironically, though, it's not the number one fear. The number one fear is actually public speaking. Yeah. But for many people, death is not a comfortable topic, and it is a big fear that they do have. But we were talking about that. In some ways, maybe we shouldn't be afraid of it because it's not the end. There are philosophies and traditions out there that do say sometimes you go to death and poof, that's it. In fact, there's materialists out there who say that death is the end of it. There's nothing beyond that. There's nothing greater. There's no point. It's just we come into this life and boom, when we die, it's all over in the blink of an eye. I don't subscribe to that, as you know, and as I just sort of said, I do believe in the continuation of life energy, which is, to me, I call the soul or spiritual self. While we were talking, it actually brought up, ironically, a quote from Bob Dylan, one of his songs, and it's called "It's All Right, Ma, I'm Only Bleeding," in which he says, "Those not busy being born are busy dying." And I think there's a great amount of wealth in that little verse and statement, because I believe that when we come into this world, the purpose is to be reborn in a way, you know, to be re-spiritualized, to recognize again the greatness that we have lost from coming into this world, that we become veiled to this truth that we are spiritual beings, you know, in this physical experience, and we become unconscious of this notion. Born are busy dying. I believe he's really saying that, you know, you have to be busy rebirthing yourself, because otherwise you are just moving straight to death. And, you know, if you want to think that that's the end of it, then what's really the purpose for that? And I believe that there is a great purpose to being here. In fact, in Eastern traditions, the Buddhists call your birth a precious human rebirth, because they say that it's only in this human life that you really have the ability to then reunite yourself, break out of the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth, and reunite yourself to the truth, which they call, as some traditions of the Buddhist schools call, the pure mind or the clear light mind, and, you know, which the Hindus and yogis would say is Brahman, to reunite yourself again to God. The only time you have the ability to do that is in this lifetime. Right.
I heard a church, I don't know how, it was a church explanation for birth and death. And they actually said you should cry when a baby's born and you should rejoice when somebody transitions. Wow. Which was a total opposite because they knew they were coming into suffering and was going to have to struggle and figure things out. But when they left their body, they were going back to a state of more divine, and then whatever takes place, you know, after that. But, you know, I've always been curious about this subject, because everybody, you know, it's like you want to figure this thing out, because, you know, a lot of people go to church for insurance policies so that this isn't the end-all, be-all. Yeah, and they have a better, you know, after-death life. And for the materialist type that doesn't believe that you just die after this, I would say they've never had really a deep spiritual experience of any kind. Because once that happens, there's a transformative thing, and you have an inner knowing that you can't really explain, but you know there's more. Many of them say we're delusional. Exactly. We've lost our mind. That's okay. But in the Bible, Jesus went to the Mount of Transfiguration, and he only took 2 disciples, and he's seen Moses and Elijah. And the disciples did too. And the reason my mentor said he only took those 2 is because they were the only 2 at that level of consciousness that could actually perceive the fact that they were still alive. Wow. So, and then I also heard from this mentor that after Christ's death, there was only like 500 people that actually seen him. That's in the book of Acts. Yeah, it says that after he, you know, resurrected,
that there was a group of people who seized him, and I think it totaled like 500 people.
And he goes on to say the reason is they were the only ones that were at the level of conscious awareness to where he could be perceived.
Wow.
Because even when he went around some that knew him, they didn't recognize him at first.
It took a while, and they were walking with him along the road from Damascus. That was a long walk.
Right.
And they didn't recognize that they were talking to Christ until he broke the bread.
Right. And then their consciousness raised of, that's him, and then they seen him.
Right.
Up until then, they didn't. So the claim is that when you reach these higher levels of spiritual awareness, you're still walking around alive today, like Christ and Elijah and all them are around, but we just can't perceive them. And it's on a basis of, is it necessary or needful for your journey? I mean, do you need that insight or that input?
Yeah.
You get what I'm saying?
I do. That is an interesting perspective as well, because a lot of the Eastern traditions have that perspective as well. So when I was studying Buddhism in the monasteries, the Tibetan Buddhists in the monasteries of India and Nepal, they do have this belief system that when you attain a spiritualized body, which is called the Dharmakaya, kaya means body, so your truth body, your true spiritual self, that you begin to perceive the world around you very differently than the level of someone who's very materialistic and maybe just physically minded begins to perceive the world. Because you have a different level of consciousness, a different level of experience, you begin to perceive the world very differently, where wind blowing through the trees might actually be the sound of like a message or maybe mantra, or you're hearing it in a very different way because your perception level and your sensory level is very, very different. It's sort of like, you know, and I use this example a lot when I talk about different levels of consciousness, like the movie Shrek, which is a movie for young children.
Right.
You know, they specifically plant jokes in there that are for adults as well. You know, maybe they have like a maybe sexual innuendo or something where, you know, the adults who've had the experience of, you know, maybe having a physical sexual experience get the joke. But a child who's listening to the very same words have no idea what that meaning is, but yet they're hearing the exact same words, but the adult is interpreting it very different than the child can interpret it, because their level of consciousness and their level of experience is very different. And to Eastern tradition, someone who's attained a spiritualized body begin to interpret the sensory world around them from a very different level of experience, and it has a very different meaning to them, and they can see things and perceive things in a way that someone who hasn't had spiritual experiences can.
Absolutely. I mean, this kind of aligns with the fact that a lot of family members, for a brief moment or two after someone's death during that week, or later in, you know, their life, they actually see or perceive their mother or father or whoever it was that passed.
Yes.
But no one else sees them.
Right, or feels them, or senses their presence.
Well, they would be more in tune, you know, more conscious of, sensitive to that. So if something triggered the fact that they could raise their consciousness at a moment, like a certain smell or a noise, and then all of a sudden they see that person there. I mean, I've had that happen to me with my cousin when she died. I had a dream. Mine came in a dream, and she was sitting in front of this beautiful flowing window with white curtains and sunshine coming through to her back, and she was looking forward towards me. In front of her was this tons of books laying on the ground, and she was looking at me and looking down and spreading her hands towards the books. No words were spoken, and it was strange because, you know, we were close growing up, but we'd grown apart, and I lived in a totally different state and all this.
Okay.
Totally different lives. But I think she was trying to show me that there was probably a lot of studying or learning coming my way, which actually did happen. It is happening. It's continuing to take place. And I went back to Kentucky and actually told her mother of the dream because, you know, people are grieving and they like to have some kind of confirmation or comfort. Yeah, that they're okay, and you know, the deceased one is okay, and all of those sort of things. Right. Because too many people, the afterlife is still something that's a big question mark. You know, and I think that's where a lot of the fear comes from too, is that question mark of the fear of the unknown. Is it really there? Is there life after death? All of these sort of things. But in the Tibetan, going back to the Tibetan tradition,
they have the specific thing known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead,
Right.
in which after a person dies, they speak to the person's consciousness for a certain number of days because they say it hangs around.
Right.
And they try through the Tibetan Book of the Dead, when you're reading it to the dead person, the dead consciousness, you're trying to guide that energy, that soul, that consciousness to the light so that it can go and have hopefully a better rebirth. And so, you know, it's a very interesting thing that they believe that maybe sort of like they're hanging around, like, I guess you say, a purgatory realm,
Right.
or an in-between realm, in which they're still talking because they believe that the consciousness can still hear it and is still around, hanging around, that can be spoken to and guided during that time.
Right. A lot of the religious people that I was acquainted with, they really get an attitude and a fear about this near-death experience process.
Right.
They just think it's another trick of the devil trying to sway you away from what's really real and you don't die. But I think with the realization of the time when you actually have an experience and you feel reborn,
Right.
you've tapped into that true energy, that true life force that really is real. The only thing that actually is real.
Yeah.
And that gives you a better comfort and a knowledge of, yeah, there's more to this story than you realize, regardless of your fears, regardless of all the, you know, agendas or propaganda that people are trying to get you to believe.
Right.
It's really about just going deep within yourself and connecting to God.
Absolutely.
And, you know, people don't like the word God, but connect to God, which is an inner energy within you. And it's not the human part of you. You're not saying you are God. You're just connecting to this. And in the silence, speak to me. Show me what I need to see, what I can't see.
Right.
Help me.
Yeah.
And the rest happens. It takes place.
It does. And again, you know, that's part of, you know, having faith that the answers and the messages will be shown to you and you will get the answers.
Yes.
Yeah. But we thank you all. I think we need to stop here for today. We truly appreciate you watching, listening. We'd love to know, of course, your comments. So what do you think about death? What do you think about the afterlife? Do you believe that there is one? Have you had contact with it? You know, share any of your experiences.
Exactly. Yes.
Let us really know. We'd love to hear it. We're very interested in all of those things. But we truly appreciate you. We thank you for listening, and we hope that each and every one of your days is filled with an abundance of love, happiness, and peace.